G'day, Lewis.
Hello, Daniel. Huge show today.
Oh, big show today. But, I'm so excited for you because you found a home to live in Melbourne.
Oh, far out. We can stop talking about the rental crisis, Australia. I got a house.
That is off all future irrational fears. It is off. We do have two big Ozpol guests today, but before we introduce them, we have to let you know that our Melbourne Comedy Festival show is on in less than 1 week. We're at the Malthouse Theatre, 6:45 on Tuesday. Some of the biggest and best satirical comedy brains in the country will be on stage making fun of Australian politics. If you love irrational fear, like this podcast, you'll love the Irrational Fear live show.
I would say on most weeks, the live show is better. Today, I'm actually pretty excited. We've got some heavy hitters with us today.
We do some heavy hitters. Thank you, Lewis. All right, I'm recording my end of Irrational Fear on Gundungurra land. Let's start the show.
The following program contains rude words like Mark Latham, blockchain, and Twitter. Irrational Fear recommends listening by immature audiences. Comedians, experts, laughing at the world as it burns down around us. This is a Rational Fear.
Tonight, Donald Trump places a 10% tariff on Australian industries, with the only exemption being the export of Hemsworth brothers. And a Chinese spy ship has been spotted off the coast of Australia. The ambassador says it's just there to watch maths. And Peter Dutton says that he'd love to move to Kirribilli if he becomes Prime Minister, being the first Queenslander to admit that Sydney is better than Brisbane. It's the 4th of April 2025, and with more subscribers than HBO Max, this is Irrational Fear.
This is a Rational Fear.
Don't forget to unplug your set.
Welcome to Irrational Fear. I'm your host, former head of DEI at DARPA, Dan Illich, and on the podcast this week we've got two seasoned independents. One who's had the job for a single electoral cycle, and the other who's on their third attempt at getting the job. I don't know about you, Lewis, but I have a real aversion to any kind of employment, so why anyone would want to be doing this in the first place is extremely baffling to me. From the electorate of Wentworth in Sydney, it's Allegra Spender, and from Wannon, it's Alex Dyson. Welcome, Allegra and Alex.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Longest job interview ever. Honestly, 6 years it's been so far and counting. So, yeah, we'll see how we go.
Allegra, you just sitting there going, loser, get it in one.
No. But I've got to say, election campaigns are just one big long job interview where your interview panel constantly changes and has lots of different views about what they really want.
Yeah. Well, you two actually have never met, Alex and Allegra, so it's nice to bring you on this podcast together.
And I have never met Alex either.
To kind of give you a bit of a difference, you've got a very different constituent, but also a very different electorate. Wannon is 34,000 kilometres, slightly larger than Belgium. Wentworth is 31 square kilometres. You can fit 989 Wentworths in one Belgium. So who has the harder job here? Allegra, Alex, or someone who's got no idea the size of Belgium?
If you ever had to wait in line for a flat white down at Porch and Parlour on Bondi Beach, then you'll know that it is one of the hardest. I mean, that's longer than driving from Warrnambool to Colac most of the time. So
you can get a park in Warrnambool.
Yeah, you can't get a park.
I'm going to say.
Yeah.
I think I could get the entire electorate to vote for me if I could solve parking in the eastern suburbs. So I think that would make a really big difference around here.
Some politicians did promise some big car parks at one stage. Allegra, you hadn't thought about
Yes, I know,
doing something like that?
That's that sounds like the sort of pork barreling that, has got a lot of people into problems. And it's a sort of thing that I'm kind of against, I'll be honest.
Allegra, what do you mean kind of against? You're the member of parliament. Isn't the name of the game to pork barrel the shit out of your electorate? Isn't that the aim?
To be honest, I've watched my opponent just in the last 2 weeks give, I think it's about maybe almost $20 million away to various institutions. And, last time I looked, we had a significant budget deficit and that we should be making judgments based on their merit. It's really surprising to me. I don't think this is how the community wants people to do politics.
Alex, your electorate is almost the opposite. It's been suffering from a distinct lack of pork.
The pork aisle is very bare. Been a safe seat for about 70 years. Malcolm Fraser won it as a 25-year-old in 1955.
Wow.
And it hasn't been as close until last election, where the independent campaign managed to get down to about a 3.8% margin. And so, there's a lot of election promises happening now, which is great to see that. But, as Allegra said, you want to be seeing these things dealt out on a needs basis, the need not being the person trying to be Prime Minister's election chances, the need being that community members are actually struggling here, and there's a few things that aren't fit for purpose, which I'm really trying to get behind and advocate for.
Alex, I understand that rather than putting up core flutes with your face on them, you've been giving out people orange dogs to put up around the place. What's the strategy there?
Well, it's interesting because it's, been a while in the making. I've been going around and having conversations with people since about June last year, and we sort of, because a lot of independent campaigns sort of saw the success that Cathy McGowan had in Indi, and their mascot was the black cockatoo. And so we thought, well, we want a mascot as well. It'd be great to have a little mascot. And we landed on the Kelpie, because the working dog, the Kelpie, was actually born in our electorate, near the town of Casterton. And, I was born in the electorate as well. And I'd be the first member for Wadden for at least 70 years that was born here. And, hardworking, energetic. And when the farmer tells it to do something, it bloody does it. So there's a few links between the Alex Dyson independent campaign and the Kelpie. And, that's how it became a little bit of a mascot around the place, and popping up on fences all the way from Winchelsea through to Portland and the South Australian border.
Allegra, have you thought about swapping out your core flutes, instead of your face, putting like another Bondi icon, like a blue bottle, or maybe like Dr. Chris Brown, Bondi vet?
Formerly Dan Illich.
Hey, come on. We have beautiful animals in Wentworth as well. We have whales off our coast. We have wonderful birds. We have a whole variety of things. So, no, I'm afraid I've got lots of posters of my face around the place, and I just say to people, don't worry, it'll all be over soon, particularly to my kids.
Is that what you're saying to yourself when you see your face at every corner as well?
We made a video at Irrational Fear a few weeks ago talking about some of the campaigns, the Australians for Prosperity campaigns against you, essentially funded by the coal lobby, trying to get rid of anyone who believes in climate change. But I know, Dyson, you have too recently been and last election, you've been experiencing some of the interesting tactics of some of these side parties that are taking money from the Liberal Party or the coal lobby, but don't have their name on it specifically.
Yeah, it's been a really fascinating experience having deep fake images of yourself put in every letterbox around your hometown and beyond. And it was obviously, the problem is it was obviously fake. I have nowhere near as big a muscles as they depicted me as. Quite weedy.
Yeah.
They basically gave me Pocock's body.
Well, because they'd already done the Pocock
with someone else's T-shirt.
They just mashed your face over the top. But
it's so weird to have people saying, oh, look out, he's going to vote with, the Greens, and then that later at night they vote with the Greens on a misinformation bill, and the same as Photoshop you next to Anthony Albanese, and then you watch the TV and they're voting with Anthony Albanese to give themselves more taxpayer money at a come election time. It's really strange, the hypocrisy that surrounds these things. And it's also just the childish tactics. You would think a party who's been in power for 70 years in a particular area would have legacies that they could point to or ideas for the future, but instead they're photoshopping their opponent's head. It's pretty disappointing, but it's where we're at the moment in politics, which is a shame.
Allegra, have you had some similar experience?
Yeah, I've had a lot, particularly around the Australians for Prosperity, particularly around tax reform, sort of painting me as, on taxes. I have to say that grates a bit, because one of the things I'm most proud of having done in this time is to do a tax green paper, which has not been about increasing taxes, but it's been about how do we get the tax mix better for young people and better for business and better for the climate transition. And, it feels so basic that, when we as a country can't deal with the tough issues, when someone like me takes on the tough issues, does a tax green paper, says, hey, we need the hard conversations, and then lo and behold, oh, look, it gets turned into an attack ad by the coal lobby. It's sort of such a playbook that, it's a bit embarrassing. But lucky, I think a lot of my community I've engaged in, had, literally over 1,000 responses on tax and other things. So I think a lot of people really see through it. And a lot of people come up to me and say, look, even people who say, I don't support you, but I love what you're doing on tax because this is a really important structural issue and no one's got the guts to talk about it. So I think a lot of people do see through those tactics.
And it's really wild that this, particularly, I guess, on my end of things, coming from a background in broadcasting and comedy-adjacent material, having people, try to say that they're the adults in the room, but their actual videos they put out is a video of me dancing at a music festival going, this guy is weird. And it's just so juvenile and like so high school. And it's like, it's not very mature at all that's the kind of people that they're wanting your vote and they're calling other people names. It's extremely primary school.
Yeah, these are also the people who share a space with Barnaby Joyce. And I'm like, if you're fine with that, dancing at the music festival is the most normal thing imaginable.
I can't imagine why you were at Splendour in the Grass not doing spreadsheets instead, Alex Dyson. It's very much a faux pas on your end.
Yeah, it was my bad.
For kind of both of you, what's the biggest misconceptions around your campaign? Allegra, let's start with you. Is there a big kind of misconception that you constantly are telling people, no, that's not the way it is?
Look, I think probably two. One is that you're a Green, which I'm not, and I'll be honest. When the coalitions put things forward, I backed them 60%. Labor 50% and the Greens 45%. So I think actually there are a lot of people in my community who wish I was a bit more of a Green, but on the numbers I'm certainly not. But the second piece has been around volunteers. I remember Paul Fletcher, who resigned as the member from Bradfield. He said, all these, the Teals, they're just, they're so-called community independents. They're just paying all these people, to be volunteers. It's like, how much money do you think we've got? I mean, honestly, it's a lot of money to pay 1,400 people from the community. And if you ask them, there's they're all the same people, just shipped from one electorate to the other. It's like, talk to them. They're from Paddington. They're from Bellevue Hill. They're from Bondi. So I think some of that stuff, and I think it comes from the sense that, the big parties are so disconnected from their communities now that they have no idea how you could get that many people out there. And so the only thing they can assume is that we're paying for them. It's like, honey, I'm afraid that's not right. But I think any of the community who comes out there and talks to any of their volunteers really realises what's going on.
Yeah, Hollywood studios can't afford 1,400 extras.
No, those extras, they're expensive.
Dyson, I read an article recently where Dan Tehan was being interviewed and someone was driving by in a car and yelled, "Hey, Dan Tehan!" And then he waved at him and said, "Go, Alex Dyson!" Was that one of your volunteers, your so-called volunteers shipped in from Wentworth?
Yeah, I'm not sure who that particular person was, but look, I'm always encouraging people to stay as respectful as possible. I don't think he overstepped the mark there, but it is interesting being in a seat where in one, and we're not really used to a close race, which is interesting. People seeing the signs go up and everything, and both candidates working extremely hard, and both on a lot of things like a uniform ticket. Like, we want to fix the roads, we want more doctors in the area, we want support for farmers. It's just really interesting how the politics gets in the way of that, and it sort of becomes extremely divisive. It comes extremely negative. Where I'm just saying, well, actually, I think I want to fix the roads, and I think being an independent member will have more power, particularly with the likelihood of a minority government. And so it's amazing how people who are meant to be on the same team, it can get that particularly divisive. And I think constituents are really sick of it, and Australians are sick of the negativity and want people who are willing to go and work together. Because if you had a footy team, if our footy team Australia, the Australia Goannas or something like that, and you had the people trying to kick goals together fighting constantly. They both say they want to kick goals, but they're claiming the other person doesn't. You're like, you're never going to get anything done. And so,
this is great regional allegory, Alex. This is fantastic. This is like Tony Windsor level allegory. Well done.
Well, it's true. Like, I'm just sick of one party getting in and saying Australia's going great, the other side going, we're struggling, we're the worst, they're incompetent, and then an election happens, we switch government, and then suddenly it's a change of heart. It's like, oh, they're the worst, this is their fault, and it's pretty exhausting. I could only sympathise with you, Allegra, who was in the room when this is happening, because I was watching a Question Time recently and just the argy-bargy in there, whilst I think the independents are sort of shaking their heads going, what's happening here?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think I don't think the major parties realise how much people are turned off by it. I always sit there in Question Time and there are always kids in the gallery, and I just despair because there's so much shouting and sort of name calling and blame gaming. And the real truth is, when I talk to people in my community, people go, you know what, I don't care whose idea it is. I'm interested in the evidence, what is going to work, talk to experts, consult your community, listen to the stakeholders and make decisions based on the evidence. That's what people are asking from me, because most people, they just care about the outcomes. And I think it's all this sort of bickering and this kind of constant referring to each other, to the major parties as, just taking each other down. I think a lot of people are completely turned off by that, because it's not how we behave in our sort of our personal lives, in our community. It's not the sort of behaviour that's acceptable there. And so therefore, to watch it being played out on television, people just go, you know what, that's not us. And I think it makes actually politics much less accessible and makes people much, much more cynical about everyone.
That's such a good point, Allegra. I've been thinking about it a bit with the negative campaigning going on. They put out a flyer of me dancing, like my bum in every letterbox recently. It's just unbelievable. The photoshopping their head, and then they have the school students visit Canberra and go, here's the next generation of Australian political leaders. What kind of person would want to run for parliament if this is the way they treat a dude from Warrnambool who wants to stand up for his town and hopefully get a better deal for the area? Like, it's just dissuading people from engaging and just having an us versus them. It's really appalling. And so it's
Alex,
actually fueled my fire a little bit more to go, we really need this out of politics. We need to remain positive. We need to encourage as many of people as possible to have a stake in the future of their communities and their country.
Just to jump in there, sorry, I know
you got this is your podcast now.
I'm going to say the one
Dyson and the Spens in the morning. That's what it is, Allegra.
The one thing I'm going to say is the job itself is amazing, and that's what when people ask me, oh, isn't it all, particularly as a woman, isn't it awful? And I say, to be honest, this is the best job I've ever done, and I have so much joy because you make a real difference at the national level, but also at the local level. Most times I go out, someone will come up and stop me and say, oh, thank you because you helped, your team, your volunteers helped me with this or with that. But also because you meet incredible people in your community. I grew up in this area. I've spent, most of my life in Wentworth, but I'm still sort of finding and learning about different parts of my community that I wasn't connected to before. So it is an incredible, inspiring job. Alex, it's worth the third job interview. I'm really hoping that this time is a winner for you.
Well, Allegra, do you have one bit of advice for Alex if he gets in?
Look, I would say work out a couple of things that you really want to focus on and really focus on those. And to be honest, sometimes circumstances, will deliver those to you because things will happen in your community. And I've had some real challenges in my community, both in terms of the impact of the Jewish community on anti-Semitism, but also Bondi Junction, what happened there, and the impact on mental health. So some things you cannot plan and you just have to deal with. But I think a big part is, when it comes to certain policy areas or things you want to make a difference on, choose a couple and really pursue them. I've chosen tax. Not a popular choice for many people, but one I'm really proud of. And so I think that's super important because then you can really kind of build momentum and really kind of drive change around that. And have fun because it's an amazing job.
So what's your one thing that you would do?
It's interesting how talking to people, the roads is a major issue. One, for safety, but the another one is, I think it comes back to why I think a lot of independents have put up their hands recently, and that's integrity and seeing, if you drive from the southwest of Victoria and you make it into Melbourne, you see the money going into construction of roads and it says commuters save on average 11 minutes on their commute, and they're out at the back and we get a sign, caution, rough surface, slow down. It's 60 now on 100 road with no end in sight. Like, it's literally been a year between Warrnambool and Cobden or Warrnambool and Hamilton. Outside of Tarrington is another thing. And you feel that, you're a second-class citizen sometimes in the country. You got to wait a lot longer for a doctor. The educational outcomes are not as good. Tertiary studies. It's it does come back to fairness, and I think that's a good thing about Australia is you want a fair go, and yeah, I think a lot of the independents are tapping into that, and it has been an unfair the way that the politicians have been treating particularly safe seats over a long amount of time, and yeah, I think communities are seeing the results every day. Some of it's on the roads, some of it's at the doctors, and yeah, hopefully they'll vote for change.
Something I try and do when I'm in Parliament is I try and sit next to people who come from different parts of the country than me. And I think it's, what you just told me, Alex, about what's going on in your community helps me be a better MP, because your job is not only what you do locally, it's also what you perspective on the national issues. And so that's actually, when there are divisions, which, the votes, often you're sort of sitting with lots of different parts of country, community, and I'll go and sit next to a Nat or a Lib or a Labor or another crossbencher I don't know so well and just say, look, what's going on? And I think that helps, you be a better person.
Oh, God, I feel like a better person listening to you both. Oh, God.
Yeah, sickened by this positivity. Hey, let me see if I can bring it back to something a bit more our style. You both have very punnable surnames. Allegra, what's the worst that you've seen for, being a politician with the last name Spender, people must be having a field day.
They have. It's funny, I used to work for the UK Treasury, and so when I joined the UK Treasury, when I sat down at my desk, the person whose desk I took, her surname was Thrift. So they really went to town on Thrift versus Spender. It's the predictable, hey, big spender. That's really, I think the Telegraph has done that on their front page. So, yeah. It's predictable. I think you could do more with it.
And obviously, Alex, have you had any Dyson sucks references?
Yeah, people mention the Dyson sucks with the vacuum. Other people have said do a positive. Dyson cleans up the competition or cleans up politics.
Okay.
So I guess there's a little bit of that. I have been meaning to get some magnets saying vote for Alex. And then you can put the magnet on the Dyson hand dryers in the bathrooms. So vote for Alex Dyson and with the QR code to the campaign. But I haven't got them done yet. I should try and sneak that in before the election takes place on the 3rd.
We've only got about 5 minutes left. So what I'd like to do now is play Hang On a Sec. I'm going to play you a video. At any point you want me to stop the video, to comment on the video, I would love you just to say, hang on a sec. This goes for all of our panel, including Lewis, who is yet to run for independent candidate. But this comes from the West Australian. This is one of their editorial leads with their video on Instagram that they just published yesterday called Are the Teals Bullshit? All right, here we go.
Teals are making the news for the wrong reasons.
That's because the Teals, like all politicians, are a little bit full of shit. They're actually worse because they act so pious, like they're above politics.
Do you agree with every...
Oh, I thought you said hang on a sec, but that was just Allegra coming down on the video.
That's me.
Yeah.
Do you agree with everything the coalition does? The Labor Party, the Greens? Nope, me neither.
The guiding lights of democracy, like a modern-day Socrates, preaching about openness and transparency, blah, blah, blah.
Hang on. What was when the tone of voice about that was?
Yeah.
Were we supposed to be like getting on board with hating transparency? Is that what were we supposed to? Getting on board with transparency, blah blah blah, like
Blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
it's just like they want to do good things, wankers. It's such a weird tone.
Yeah, it's funny, like being around and publishing every donation I get on my website, and making sure that it's a lot better than which you don't have to. I'm doing it because I think politicians should be open with their transparency, blah blah blah. But there's also you don't have to declare who gave you a certain amount of money. I think it's around $15,000. I've got the policy of it's $1,000 or more, but you've got to put your name on it. And so, I just acting the values. I don't know. Maybe people don't want that. They want us to go back to a non-transparent side of things. Yeah, it sounds interesting.
Public disclosure is less Socrates, and more like compliance, so you don't go to jail. I think that's. Here we go. Keep going.
With some accountability.
All the while refusing to say which party they'll support in the increasingly likely event of a hung parliament come May 3.
Hang on a sec. That's the thing. Like, you don't know what each leader... Like, I've never met, Peter Dutton. I don't know what he's going to say, what he's going to do for the community. I'd love to have a chat to him about that. And I'd likewise with Anthony Albanese. Would love to sit down and see what his vision for the country is, and particularly for the people of Wannon. And so being able to say rail railroaded into saying who you support without actually talking to them. I don't understand that point. I don't know. Allegra, have you faced that in the past?
Look, I'd say also, like, this is negotiation, right? Like, I think for me, what you're trying to do is if you ever comes to that scenario, you've got to negotiate for what is most important, both for the community but for the broader country. And if you say, hey, I'm all in on one side or the other, you might as well just say, no negotiation. There's nothing I'm after at all. And I think that's, it's, a lot of good, clever business people in my electorate. And, I think all of them would say crazy idea to give up any negotiating power, before you have to, because, and as you say, let's see what they're actually going to offer, because, there are a lot of policies that are not yet out there, and a lot of policies that aren't particularly clear. And I think a lot of policies also that they might be willing to negotiate if push comes to shove.
It's so striking because it strikes me like a lot of the independents, they work policy by policy, what's best for their electorate, and they go through it. It's like, who is going to guarantee supply in the lower house at the very start? No one. Like, that's absolutely ridiculous, right? It's so dumb.
Yeah, no, you don't. I mean, I think I think stability of government's really important. So I think that they do need sort of confidence and supply. But certainly what I always ask, what I think my community is asking me for is just each piece of legislation, look on it at its merits. And I think that's a very fair and very reasonable request from the community, and one that I'm really proud to be able to offer them.
This man is angry that independents would like to stay independent.
A teal candidate without knowing whether, when push comes to shove, they'll go with him or him. You're a f***ing idiot who doesn't deserve to be part of it.
Whoa! Oh, my goodness.
Well, I don't think people a country like Australia needs to be as angry as that about things.
I think that's way off base. I do not know who that's making. That does not feel like it's appealing to Australians in general.
What I've been trying to say to people is, like, I would love to represent the community, and I've been running since before the term teals has even been invented. So I've been running since 2019.
Alex Dyson's been running for Parliament since Allegra Spender was just a dream.
And yeah, what I've been saying to people across the time is, like, try it out. I will do my best to fix the problems that you've told me, but if I don't do it, you can vote me out. That's one of the great things about it as well, is if I'm not delivering, is you're more than welcome to not vote for me or any party who's not going well. And you can also vote for an independent in the lower house and vote for a party that aligns to your values in the Senate as well. Like, you have a very powerful vote when it comes to these things. And I think just it's my thoughts that independents do a really good job for their communities in the lower house. It's
there
fantastic.
are just hundreds of comments on this video on Instagram. One from a guy called Chris Berkower says, teals aren't a party. They're independent, you flog. Spring Rella says, a middle-aged white guy with a clipboard and a pen doesn't get to tell me how to vote. And then someone called Jamie says, don't be so emotional.
That's that guy's got a lot going on. Alex, you're just on the numbers, what were you down to? A sort of 3% margin or
3.8? What or something last time.
How many humans is that in Wannon? What's 3.8% of?
If 3,960 people who voted Liberal last time decided to preference independent above that, that would be a winning position.
Oof. Okay.
Yeah, it's approximately that amount.
That's tight. Allegra, is it tight in your electorate too in Wentworth?
Look, I think you just never know. There's been some polling recently, which is encouraging, but I think you just keep on going. My sort of philosophy is you just do every single thing that you can, and then on polling day, then it's out of your hands, and then and that's the joy of democracy, and that's what you have to accept if you're going to run.
Absolutely. I've been saying something similar. We're not out there to win votes. Like, if you treat it as winning votes, you can be as bad as the politicians, because that's how they make a lot of decisions. What will win us the most votes? If you're out to make your community feel heard, you're out to hear their concerns, to do the right thing, and then make it part of your platform if enough people are saying you that this is one of their big issues. And then if you're doing your job well, and as Allegra said, you're doing everything you can for that, people will understand. They'll see where you're coming from, and the voting day, election day will take care of itself. You're absolutely right.
It does feel like inevitably you're going to get plenty of people in an electorate who completely disagree with each other, though. So you're always going to get people who you can listen to them, but you still have to sometimes say, hey, I'm listening to you, but I'm going to do the opposite.
Yeah, well, you've got to come in without ideological position to be completely against someone and listen to them, but other people are telling you the same things. I try to say, I'll explain my reasoning behind it, and you may disagree with this one, but there'll be other ones you can agree for before. And again, you don't have to vote for people. You don't have to get so angry and start swearing when it comes to disagreeing with your fellow Australian, because I think there's more that brings us together than it will tear us apart.
Yeah, 100%. I think that piece on common ground is really important, and I think we do need to work on that, a bit more serious, but it's really important. And Australians have a lot of common ground, but sometimes I feel like politics tries to exploit, the differences and make them seem even bigger than they are. And I think, where we should be coming back to is like, common ground. And, thinking about your electorate, Alex, and mine, a lot of people who are like, people in the city, they don't care about regional Australia. And it's like, you know what? They do. I mean, a lot of people have their roots in regional Australia, care deeply, have family. And so just because you live in the city doesn't mean you don't care.
If you live in Wentworth, you've probably got a holiday house in regional Australia.
Stop it. Can I tell you 40% of Wentworth rents, 60% live in apartments. I'm going to, call you, Dan, on all those sort of assumptions you make about Wentworth.
Dan was a Wentworth renter for a long time.
I had to leave Wentworth to go to regional Australia to buy a house, so,
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is. But I remember talking to you last election, Dan, as well, and one of those things is talking about climate change and people in the region. And it's funny, people don't not care about climate change, but they've got a lot of immediate needs that aren't being taken care of in the same way that people can then start looking at the existential crises that we're facing. If you can't, get to work on time, you can't afford to put food on the table and those sort of things. And so making sure that the Australian government in Canberra is taking care of regional people so that they're in a position to be able to put that as their top priority as well.
Are you saying the Nationals aren't taking care of regional Australia, Alex? Is that
you're
what
putting
you're
words
saying?
in my mouth, Lewis. You're putting words in my mouth, and I shan't have it. Thank you.
It sounds like someone suggesting the National Party seem to be more of a mining company now than a farming company. They again, my words, not Alex's words, but...
Well, I'm not saying that because people can vote for the Nationals, and particularly in Wannon, there's a good way to, if you want a Nationals candidate in Wannon, is vote independent this time, and then the Liberal and National Party, the rules being that they can put up two candidates and go against each other to see who will take the seat. So if you want Nationals in Wannon, vote Alex Dyson independent.
That's Tetris. That's good thinking.
That's 5D chess, gentlemen.
Allegra and Alex, thank you so much for your time in this very precious pre-election period. Really appreciate you taking 40 minutes out of your day to fumble around with Riverside to get that right and talk with us on Irrational Fear.
Cheers. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks so much.
Big thanks to Road Mics, our Patreon supporters. Don't forget to come see us at the Malthouse Theatre for Melbourne Comedy Festival. Let's get our plugs underway. Allegra, do you want to plug anything before we go?
Just the people of Wentworth and all, the wonderful people here and all of our cafes and the lovely things that you were making fun of before at the start.
Can I say Bobby's Cafe has the best croissants in Sydney. That's my hot tip there. Alex Dyson?
I'll plug the Disabled Surfers Association. I was wandering along near the Hyperbole Surf Club and a bloke named Luke ran out the window and said, "Oi, what are you doing Saturday morning? Can you come help us? Because we're at the Disabled Surfers Association." And I said, sure. It wasn't too far from my house. So I went down there and it was just incredible what they do for people living with a disability to get out in the surf and experiencing that. Some have mobility issues. There's all sorts of disabilities represented. But it was just a really joyous morning and it just goes to show. And it's the same with the CFA in our area, the SES in the area, whether it's the Surf Club, whether it's the Lions Club, like this. Australia is really built on volunteers. So maybe a shout out to the volunteers of Australia, which keep so much of this country moving.
Look, and then that's the same here. To be honest, in Bronte and Bondi, we do. Surf clubs have done a lot with Ukrainian refugees, trying to teach them about water safety. With new migrants and things like that. It is like the volunteering's here in the city as well as where you are as well.
Plus, you guys have had some hectic surf out there lately, Allegra. So there's been big work for the...
taking down part of icebergs and quite a lot of the, and some of the seawalls up at Bronte as well. It's pretty tough.
My favourite place to have martinis and oysters. So peace be with you. I hope that gets fixed next time I'm in Sydney. These are the big issues. These are the cost of living. These are the bread and butter issues. Where am I going to get my oysters?
When I visited there about 10 years ago, it was the first time I realised you don't say still or sparkling, you say tap. You say tap water, please. Otherwise, you get a bottle of flat water and pay about $7. So, no, that was just a real experience. Sorry, that's not meant to be a dig. That's just what happened.
Leave it alone. I mean, Bondi Icebergs has Bondi Bogan icebergs underneath as well, which is
That's
where
true.
I go. So, that's fine.
That's
That's
nice.
totally fine. And Lewis, do you want to plug anything before we go?
Well, I'd like to plug the real volunteers, podcasters, people who go out every day doing work for nothing, out there just making dreams come true. No, I'm not going to. They both plug something nice. I'm not going to plug comedy shows.
I will plug Irrational Fear. Come see us at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival on Tuesday, 6:45 at the Malt House. Big thank you to everyone. That's it for Irrational Fear. Until next week, there's always something to be scared of. Goodbye.